September 11th, 2001, a day that shook the world. The images of the Twin Towers collapsing became burned into global memory. But beyond the tragedy, that day set off a chain reaction that would lead to the longest war in American history, the war in Afghanistan. How did one morning of terror reshape geopolitics, trigger 2 decades of conflict, and leave a legacy still felt today? Let us break down the events step by step, from the 9/11 attacks to the invasion of Afghanistan, and the global consequences that followed. Introduction. Building context. The 9/11 attacks were not just a shocking act of terrorism. They were a turning point in modern history. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost in a matter of hours. And in the aftermath, the United States launched a military campaign that would redefine international security and foreign policy for decades. In this video, we'll explain how 9/11s happened and who was behind it, why Afghanistan became the target of U.S. military action, the chain reaction that unfolded from the invasion in 2001 to the rise of terrorism worldwide, and how these events shaped global politics into the 21st century. Part 1. The 9/11 attacks. A morning of terror. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, 19 terrorists linked to al-Qaeda, an extremist Islamist group led by Osama bin Laden, hijacked for commercial airplanes. Their mission: to strike at the very symbols of American power. American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. American Airlines Flight 77 hit the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. United Airlines Flight 93, thanks to the bravery of passengers, never reached its intended target in Washington, D.C., crashing instead in Pennsylvania. Within 2 hours, both towers of the World Trade Center collapsed, creating scenes of chaos, destruction, and grief broadcast around the globe. The attacks killed nearly 3,000 people and injured thousands more, making it the deadliest terrorist attack in U.S. history. But the question immediately arose: who did this, and why? Part 2. Who was behind 9/11s? Investigations quickly revealed the group responsible: al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda had been building its network since the late 1980s. Its leader, Osama bin Laden, had declared war against the United States, accusing it of occupying Muslim lands and supporting regimes hostile to Islam. Bin Laden and his fighters had already carried out attacks against U.S. embassies in Africa in 1998 and the USS Cole in 2000. The 9/11 attacks were the culmination of years of planning. With training camps based in Afghanistan, a country then controlled by the Taliban regime, this connection would soon become central to the U.S. response. Part 3. America's response: the war on terror. Within hours of the attacks, U.S. President George W. Bush declared that America was under attack and promised that those responsible would be brought to justice. The Bush administration announced a global war on terror, a sweeping campaign not just against al-Qaeda, but against any group or government suspected of supporting terrorism. The central demand was simple: the Taliban must hand over Osama bin Laden and dismantle al-Qaeda's training camps in Afghanistan. When the Taliban refused, the stage was set for war. Part 4. Why Afghanistan? To many observers, the choice of Afghanistan as the first battleground was clear. Afghanistan had become a safe haven for al-Qaeda after bin Laden was expelled from Sudan in the 1990s. The Taliban, a hardline Islamist group that ruled most of Afghanistan, provided protection for bin Laden and his fighters. Training camps in Afghanistan produced thousands of extremists who would spread across the world. For U.S. policymakers, eliminating this sanctuary was crucial to preventing further attacks. On October 7, 2001, less than a month after 9/11s, the United States, supported by NATO allies, launched Operation Enduring Freedom, a full-scale military invasion of Afghanistan. Part 5. The invasion of Afghanistan. The U.S.-led coalition moved quickly. Airstrikes targeted Taliban command centers and al-Qaeda camps. Special forces and Afghan resistance fighters, known as the Northern Alliance, advanced on Taliban strongholds. By December 2001, Kabul had fallen, and the Taliban regime collapsed. The immediate mission seemed successful, but Osama bin Laden and other al-Qaeda leaders escaped into the rugged mountains along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, setting the stage for a much longer conflict. Part 6. The Long War. What began as a swift military campaign turned into a two-decade struggle. The US and NATO tried to establish a democratic government in Afghanistan. The Taliban regrouped, launching insurgent attacks year after year. Billions of dollars were spent, and tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians lost their lives. The chain reaction of 9/11s did not stop in Afghanistan. It extended across the Middle East, influencing the Iraq War in 2003, the rise of ISIS, and a reshaping of global security policies, including surveillance, airport security, and counter-terrorism operations worldwide. Part 7. Global Consequences. The aftermath of 9/11s and the Afghanistan war reached far beyond South Asia. NATO invoked Article 5 collective defense for the first time in history, meaning an attack on one member was an attack on all. Countries across the world introduced stricter counter-terrorism laws. Debates on human rights, torture, drone strikes, and surveillance became central to global politics. For millions of Afghans, the war meant decades of instability, displacement, and conflict. Part 8. The Legacy. After 20 years, in August 2021, the US finally withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. The Taliban returned to power, raising questions about whether the sacrifices of 2 decades achieved their intended goals. But the influence of 9/11s endures. Security checks at airports remain far stricter. Intelligence sharing between nations became a global priority. The US foreign policy landscape changed permanently, with a focus on counterterrorism for decades. Closing message. The 9/11 attacks were more than a tragic day in history. They were the spark for a global conflict that reshaped nations and lives around the world. The chain reaction that began in New York and Washington spread to Afghanistan and beyond, influencing geopolitics in ways that continue today. Understanding this chain of events is not only about remembering the past, but also about recognizing how one day can alter the course of history. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history and geopolitics explained. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the war in Afghanistan changed the world for better or worse? Let's start the conversation.